these meetups and then kind of talk about it. And I found Wim Hof. And so this is kind of before he was like in superstardom. He was just kind of like getting it. I was like, wow, like this guy's interesting. I want to meet this guy. So I reach out to him. I'm like, hey, you want to be on this podcast? Like whatever. I love what you're doing. He's like, yeah, for sure. I ended up going to Colorado. And so I remember going there, about 30 or 40 people, all different walks of life, different ages, different backgrounds, from like teachers to like sports guys to coaches. And this opening circle, we're going around the circle and people are just sharing, about their experience with like breath work and cold exposure and being in nature and being more mindful. And person after person is sharing this crazy transformation story, overcoming addiction, chronic pain, insomnia, getting off medications, depression, anxiety, curing diseases. And I'm just like, wait a minute, this is crazy. Like, are these guys paid to say this? Like how is this possible? And it got to me and I was just like, I don't really know why I'm here. I also thought, to be completely honest, like I was getting to social media at the time, it'd be cool to take a picture with women in my shorts, maybe help my Instagram following, something like that. On the last day, he led us through this breathing experience and he's just playing a drum and he's chanting and he's like, breathe deeper, hold. Like it felt like it was all over the place, but I was like fully in. Like I trust this guy at this point. I haven't died yet, so this breathwork thing, I'm sure this is gonna be fun. Next thing you know, I'm like having this out of body experience. I'm floating at the top of this like 20-foot log cabin, looking down. There's like 30 people lying there, and then I see myself, and I'm just like, wait a minute, like what is going on here? Someone put something in my drink, and then I get scared. I'm like, maybe I died. Maybe this is. I don't know what's going on. So this fear kind of like snapped me back into my body, opened my eyes. And in that moment, I felt like I was reborn. And that's the best way to describe it, like a rebirth. And all of a sudden I feel this welling of emotion, like I'm about to cry. And I come from like the old school, like men don't cry type, mentality. And before I could think, Gio, don't cry, I couldn't hold it back. And I just started bawling. This cathartic kind of like cry that made me feel like when I was 5, like boogers, tears, just I didn't give a crap. I was just letting it out and it felt so good. And then started my own practice. Slowly this method started evolving that I was just using for myself. When I started syncing my breathing to the rhythm of music, and I love music, like I started going deeper, faster. And people started asking me at that point if I could teach them how to lead breath work. And every time someone asks, like, I don't know, make excuses, I don't have time, I'm too busy, blah, blah, blah. And to be completely honest, my old self, which was transactional and a business guy, was like, okay, this is my competitive advantage. No one's doing this kind of breath work. If I start teaching all these people in this area, I'm gonna have all these competitors, like why would I want to do that? I went to meditate on it. And immediately the answer was clear. It was like, look, if you want to help as many people as possible and really create change, you have to just share this.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Empowered Self podcast. So it is a real honor and pleasure for me to get to be here with Gio Bartolomeo. Is that how you say it, Gio? Sorry.
Pretty close. Bartolomeo.
Bartolomeo. Okay, so Gio Bartolomeo is just such an amazing person, and some of the main things that he's done in his life, I mean, he's achieved a lot of amazing things, but some of the bigger things are he is the founder and creator of a breathwork company known as Elemental Rhythm. So as you can see, I'm a big believer and love this company. And so this Elemental Rhythm company, they offer breathwork resources to people. So they have all sorts of like guided breathwork experiences that you can use and lots of reading resources available on their app and their website. So you can learn more about what breathwork actually is. Another thing is they train facilitators. I am one of those trained facilitators, and that's actually how we got to meet in person. And they also train people to be life coaches with the breathwork that they offer. He's also a lifelong entrepreneur, and he started out with a tattoo shop and then went on this personal transformation with lots of different various healing modalities. And now he's passionate about helping other people to transform and to change their life and to really usher in more health and happiness and well-being, not just for themselves, but for their communities. So he's a really big community leader. He inspires me with so many of the different things that he's done. And so Gio, how would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and share with the viewers who you are from your perspective?
Yeah, I think you did a pretty good job. It's funny when someone asks like, who are you, because we quickly go to like the things we do and things we've created as like who we are. But I guess if I had to describe like who I am as like just like a forever student, just curious about life and expanding kind of awareness, both inward and outward, and trying to, I wouldn't say make sense of this experience, but really trying to enjoy and explore it, because I don't think there's anything to figure out. That's why it's such a beautiful mystery that's life. And through a lot of this self-inquiry, it's allowed me to step more and more into alignment with more of like a natural inspired flow in life. Maybe like being more fulfilled, living more with purpose, and really just enjoying life. All that comes with it, the challenges, the ups and downs, just trying to have that perspective. So I would say, I'm a student first, and then I've done a few things in my life, breathwork, founder, entrepreneur, dad, psychonaut, biohacker. Those are some of the words that describe some of the things that I do. But for me, I'm just a student that's also trying to share and help others, because I've learned a lot from my mentors and teachers as well. And it's been super impactful for me. So some of the insights that I've, I guess, uncovered for myself, I'd love to share that with others. And hopefully that helps them on their own journey and make their own kind of understandings and perceptions of reality. So I don't know if that was kind of the answer you're looking for, but that's kind of what came to mind in the moment there.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I mean, I think that just goes to show you how successful you've been on your path of self-inquiry, because I think a lot of people who have done a lot of work into this all come to these similar conclusions, right? Like understanding that it's not always just about us, but if we are all deeply connected, then if I can share my wisdom with you, then on some level we both benefit. And that's like the ultimate goal, right? Like I think the Dalai Lama has a quote where he says like the key to your own happiness is altruism, is giving the things that you've learned in your life. And so, yeah, I think it's, you just have a lot to share because of how interesting your journey has been. But can you tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to
Yeah,
be where you are now and what brought you here?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Um, See, I was born just in Toronto, I guess. Grew up north of Toronto in Vaughan, Woodbridge to be specific. So it was a very close-knit community, 95% Italian. So very, I don't like the word closed-minded, but maybe old-fashioned. A lot of people that when they immigrated from Italy to Canada, it's kind of like time stopped. The life they left there, they felt like because this was so different, everything was still the same there. So all the values, ideas, things like the year they left was like that became entrenched in them. They kept that frozen in time. Because it's interesting because when we went back to Italy for the first time in teens, like they didn't like that I had long hair, and like I go there and people have face piercings and crazy haircuts. Like so they continue to evolve there in Italy where, the tradition of all these people that came here did not. So there's this kind of like very old school, great family values, very, a lot of like really good values that were instilled in us. But at the same time, it was like very like living in a bubble in a box. And also what I was brought up to believe is that, self-worth and net worth was the same. You have to work hard, make money, save, retire, and then die. And if you weren't success was like what's going to make you happy and what's going to make people like you and be important and all that kind of stuff. So it was really tied to like, okay, I got to be successful. I got to figure this out. So I was a pretty smart kid. I did well in school. And, my dad wanted me to be an accountant. He was an accountant, but he wasn't a CA, chartered accountant, which is the highest kind of, I guess, accounting in Canada. So his dream was for me to kind of fulfill, where he kind of fell short, I guess. And I was good with numbers, but I hated accounting. Like for me, I love novelty, experience and stuff like that. So like doing the same thing every day, like just like numbers was like not for me. And so second year university, I went to business school called Schulich at York. And I got my year 3 Canadian tax law textbook. I'll never forget. It's like the first time where repeating numbers really stood out to me. And it was $111 at the York University bookstore.
Hmm.
And I remember this number just flashing. One, because at that time was a huge amount of money for me. And something was like speaking to me. And as I'm walking back to the freezing cold, like everywhere at York University is like 2 miles to any parking lot, because everything's in the middle, you gotta walk, freezing. And I have this book in my backpack, this textbook that feels like I'm carrying a cross, like I guess like Jesus, and I was just like, man, I don't want to die on this cross. Like, this is not going to be the rest of my life as accounting. And I also knew that every kind of day that goes by, you get less and less of of a full refund on your textbook purchases. And so I turned around midway back to my car and I returned it. And from there on, I got into like marketing and entrepreneurship. And, I started all kinds of companies. You mentioned the tattoo shop. Before that, I had like a clothing company where we printed like t-shirts and made some cool stuff like that. I had a sock company. This one woman came in once and she talked about she was blind and how she was able to pair her socks. She takes them off. She would safety pin them together. I was like, oh, we could just put some buttons on socks. And so we did that. And we did all these things. And I learned a lot of failures, a lot of mistakes in entrepreneurship. But, I don't like the word failure anymore. It's more like learning. Like every time you try something and then it doesn't work out the way you expected to, which is most of the time that's what happens of your expectations, you learn. And so, I went business to business, trying to make money, really like putting a lot of pressure on myself to succeed. We were also, the Woodbridge, there's a lot of people with money. We were like probably in the lower middle class side. So West Woodbridge and, like I didn't have my own car, but going to high school, kids had like these beautiful, like souped up, Golf GTIs with Momo rims. And here I am, lucky if I can get to borrow my parents' 1990 Dodge Caravan, extended cab, minivan, burgundy, everything, inside, outside. But I was happy with that, like I had a car. And so, I just hustled and tried everything. It was very transactional. Can I make money doing this? Like, let's try, So just all kinds of things, hustling. There's also a lot of partying, drugs, gambling, like I was like the scene, in my early 20s, late teens, 20s. And I got a job in the food industry where, part-time while I was in school, I was doing some cost accounting and I quickly saw that the guys making the most money were the sales guys. I was like, hey, let me give a shot at sales. I think I could do this. So I jumped into a sales role and started like a sales brokerage company. And so I was, selling food products all up and down the East Coast, exporting from Canada and just like creating sales and started doing pretty good. And funny fact that I just, realized in the last year or so is that at one point I was the number one imported cannoli salesman in all of North America. And it's like, oh, like this thing that should be, excited about. And I didn't even realize at the time, but it was meaningless. It was really meaningless. But I was starting to make some money and I thought, bought a house, got married, was like, okay, like this is it, right? And I had this one weird experience. This is kind of like I'm just starting to get into meditation. I've been changing my diet, eating healthier the last few years and, making some changes. Still really in my old life though. And I'm sitting at the edge of my bed and I have this weird vision where I'm staring at my hands and I get this vision of these old wrinkly hands. Like my grandfather's hands, was probably like late 80s at the time. And the voice that came in my head, which was weird because I, like I'm always in my head talking, self-talk and like, talking to myself. But this was kind of felt like it came from somewhere else. And it was just like, Gio, you're a clever guy and you figured out how to like live a comfortable life. You go on one vacation a year, you slowly pay off your mortgage, you'll do all these things, watch football on Sundays and party on the weekends and, year after year, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to wake up at the same bed, an old man, and you look back at your life and you'll be like, who cares? Like, what was the point? I didn't do anything that was impactful, that mattered. I probably stayed the same person and just was locked into that for the rest of my year. This is his vision. And at that moment, I realized that I had this feeling inside of me that I couldn't pinpoint because I thought I'd be happier by, being where I was at that point in my life. And I was pretty happy, but there was something that was not right. And what I realized at that moment was I was unfulfilled. Nothing really had substance or essence. Like I wasn't creating anything or creating an impact. And I even know I wanted that at that point. I thought it was like the money was like all that was important, right? And I really felt like I had no purpose. And once I had that realization, I couldn't like unwind it or unrealize it. Like it was there. So, going into like the businesses I owned and stuff like that, I was just like feeling so blah and, arguing when I probably shouldn't have. And, I realized, okay, I got to figure this out. And so at first, like the logical brain that I had and, problem solver business guys like, hey, like I'm going to figure this out. It's just a problem I got to solve. And, I quickly realized you can't solve a problem of the heart with the mind. It doesn't really work that way. You can try, you can probably make some strides, but you really got to be able to tap into your heart space, which was new for me. And not that I didn't feel emotions or didn't like love people. It was just like a whole different space. And I did what most people probably do, is like ask, Dr. Google, like, hey, like, be my shrink, what's the purpose of life? What am I doing here? Those kind of questions, thinking like it's going to give me an answer, like, here, just do this, or, here's the answer. But it started leading me into like exploring different philosophies, so like mental at first, like reading up on Buddhism, Stoic philosophy, read the Bhagavad Gita. And these insights, these stories, like I was absorbing them mentally. I wasn't really embodying them yet, but it was kind of sparking something within me. I could feel that I was starting to kind of like veer out of my comfort zone, like a raised like Roman Catholic, religious community. And in one of the Alan Watts videos I was watching, because I was rigging to Alan Watts, because like Buddhism is a whole different kind of like ideology. Like the way that things, especially he explained for someone who had never heard that, was like, okay, I've never heard anything kind of like said like that about God, about us, about human nature. And I remember in the comments, there was, 'cause I used to love reading the comments to see what other people thought. There was one comment that said, if you think Alan Watts is interesting, Terrence McKenna will blow your mind. And I was like, oh, who's this guy? I've never heard of him before. And so like I, YouTube him. And from the first second I heard him speak, I was just absorbed into this computer and probably went on like a binge watch of like, 6 hours of like just Terrence McKenna talking. And he was like a poet, like a philosopher. And he talked about plant medicine or psychedelics. And, I'd done some psychedelics at parties, take a little mushrooms, drink a little beer, smoke a little weed. But the way he was speaking about it was something completely different. It was like this whole new realm opened up. It's like, wait, they can do that? You can use it for this? So, okay, I got to try. So I started experimenting a little bit with, psilocybin, doing solo journeys in the dark, putting some music on. And, I just was exploring this whole new realm. And very soon after that, well, he already had talked about ayahuasca, so this thing was kind of like pulling on me. And from the first time he talked about it, I was like, I have to find out what this stuff is. And a couple of days later, obviously, the way universe works, I'm scrolling through Netflix, trying to find something with my wife, and I see DMT, the spirit molecule. A week ago, I wouldn't have even known what DMT was. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So I watched that, and as I'm watching it, as the people were expressing their experiences, I could see this look in their eyes that I could feel. And I knew that I needed to experience what they were experiencing, because I knew that the words that they were saying was like not able to like translate the experience. They're just trying to put words to it. And I remember Terrence McKenna said, like, he said, whatever you think ayahuasca is, I can guarantee you it's not that. Whatever you think that experience is in your mind, if you've never done it, it's not going to be that. Right. I think the same thing about death too, like whatever you think death and heaven or whatever's going to be like, I'm pretty sure I can guarantee you it's not going to be what your mind is coming up with. It's way, way beyond that. So I reached out to Rick Strassman, who is the author of the Spirit Molecule book. And, like, hey man, like, where can I go? Sign me up for a DMT study. I want to try this. He's like, yeah, listen, there's nothing happening in this space, and psychedelics pretty much all shut down. But, like ayahuasca, you should, go there. I'm like, where should I go? And he sent me to this place in Brazil. I said, yeah, I know they do a good job here. And so I go to my wife and, hey babe, I'm going to go down to the jungle in Brazil, and I'm going to drink this kind of tea that these tribal shamans are going to, that they make. And it's going to make me hallucinate, crap my pants, vomit. And I think it's going to be really good for me. And I remember her looking at me like I had like two heads. She's like, are you completely insane? Have you lost your mind? And so there's a bit of a negotiation process, where we had our second child, I think, on the way at the time. And eventually she's like, okay, like she can see that it was something that was really, something that was pressing on me that I need to kind of go and experience. So I went down, and it's a beautiful place. And on the first experience, I had a death experience. Like my first night, it's like I died. And I realized I had a lot of fear of death. And as I died, I remember being buried kind of alive. And then the lights go out and it's blackness. And then I feel my body decomposing and turn into like thousands or millions of maggots. But I became each and every one of them as they were consuming my flesh, I guess, or whatever was happening. And from there, went through that process of like them, then I guess like, I don't know, digesting me, and I became the soil, and then I became the grass, and I came through, and then I saw the sun, and it was this incredible like experience. Scary, But, you know, always at the other side of ayahuasca, if you go into the darkness and the fear and the challenge, usually nature will reward you if you have courage, and it'll show you something beautiful on the other side. And the two things that I came away with that week in general and that night was like, one was like, listen, this experience doesn't end here. You know, there's way more. But two, it's like, you know nothing about anything. You're this little ant floating through the universe that you have no clue what's going on. You know, you humans think you're so smart, but you really know nothing. So it humbled me because I thought I was smart. I thought I knew what was going on. I thought like, oh, I found ayahuasca, you know, like all this business stuff, like, you know, I get it, you know, and I was like, yo, you don't know anything about anything. Which was scary, but also empowering because it sparked this curiosity, like, okay, like, there's so much more to explore, you know, and I came back and I knew, okay, like, I gotta burst out of my bubble, my Woodbridge bubble, and I gotta find people that are different than me, that have more insights, that have different experiences, and just started exploring, you know, my comfort zone, going to meetups and events and just different things. I ended up volunteering for a website at the time with a pretty big Facebook following. They had made this documentary that I loved, and I could tell, okay, these guys are different, you know, and I found out they were in Toronto. And it just so happens that I was at a meetup where one of the guys was there. So like I met him and ended up becoming friends with him. I volunteered for this website. And so I still got a bunch of businesses going on the side, like at the same time. And I volunteer and I said, you know, like I just wanted to do whatever I could to help. You know, I love what they were doing. I wanted to connect with more people. And I ended up starting a podcast with them and ended up meeting just really interesting people like Graham Hancock and Gabor Mate. And ended up, we started having these little meetups and we would just show some videos, talk about these things, do some meditation. It was just fun, you know, and I remember looking for interesting things to play as videos in these meetups and then kind of talk about. And I found Wim Hof. And so this is kind of before he was like in superstardom. He was just kind of like getting it. I was like, wow, like this guy's interesting. I want to meet this guy. And I told my wife, like, I need to meet this guy one day. She's like, yeah, okay. So I reach out to him. I'm like, hey, you want to be on this podcast? You know, like whatever. I love what you're doing. He's like, yeah, for sure. And it was at the perfect timing because now it would be impossible to kind of like get him on a podcast. You know, he's on like Joe Rogan and like all these like huge podcasts. And so I hop on with him and we just have this great conversation. He's like, yeah, you should come check out our first training, North American training. I'm like, okay. Didn't really do any breath work at this time. Knew nothing about cold exposure. You know, probably started doing a few cold showers after the conversation and doing the Wim Hof method here and there, but didn't go too deep with it. Was just excited to go experience this training. And so I ended up going to Colorado. This is like 2016. I'll never forget because this was like the Trump election kind of time. And I think it was like October, November. And then all the Americans are like, what's going to happen? Who's going to win? Blah, blah, blah. And so I remember going there, about 30 or 40 people, all different walks of life, different ages, different backgrounds, from like teachers to like sports guys to coaches. And this opening circle, we're going around the circle and people are just sharing, you know, about their experience with like breath work and cold exposure and being in nature and being more mindful. And person after person is sharing this crazy transformation story, overcoming addiction, chronic pain, insomnia, getting off medications, depression, anxiety, curing diseases. And I'm just like, wait a minute, this is crazy. Like, are these guys paid to say this? Like how is this possible? You know, like how is this like literally possible that just something so simple, free, that anyone can do is having these crazy transformations in people? And it got to me and I was just like, I don't really know why I'm here. You know, like I thought, you know, women invited me, cool experience. And I also thought, to be completely honest, like I was getting to social media at the time, it'd be cool to take a picture with women in my shorts, maybe help my Instagram following, you know, something like that. And so I was just there to be there. And we did all the things like, you know, swimming in these like ice cold lakes and climbing the mountains in our shorts and just having fun, you know, and really pushing ourselves. And there's one point where we were in a lake for quite a while and for 45 minutes, I couldn't feel my feet. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a good story to tell my wife. You know, I had to cut my toes off because, you know, I got frostbite in a lake. But on the last day, he led us through this breathing experience, which was different than the Wim Hof experience. You know, I don't know if they, at the time, they're calling it DMT breathing or something like that, which is also kind of interesting. And he's just playing a drum and he's chanting and he's like, breathe deeper, hold. Like it felt like it was all over the place, but I was like fully in. Like I trust this guy at this point. You know, I haven't died yet, so you know this breathwork thing, I'm sure is just going to be fun. And as we're going through it, all of a sudden I feel this like rush of energy coming through my body, like vibrating. And I'm just like, oh, this is different. Okay, like, let's keep going and just leaning into it, just going. Next thing you know, I'm like having this out of body experience. I'm floating at the top of this like 20-foot log cabin, looking down. There's like 30 people lying there. And then I see myself. And I'm just like, wait a minute, like, what's going on here? Someone put something in my drink. And it was like powerful, but not like any kind of psychedelic experience. That was very different, super clear. I'm having an out of body experience. I'm there in the room. And then I get scared. I'm like, maybe I died. Maybe this is, I don't know what's going on. So this fear kind of like snapped me back into my body. I wish I would have kind of flew through the ceiling and kind of explored nature a little bit in that moment. But I snapped back in, opened my eyes. And in that moment, I felt like I was reborn. And that's the best way to describe it, like a rebirth. And all of a sudden I feel this welling of emotion, like I'm about to cry. And I come from like the old school, like men don't cry type, mentality. And before I can think, Gio, don't cry, there's all these like really competitive dudes and other people here. It's like, you don't want to do that. It's like, I couldn't hold it back. And I just started bawling. This cathartic kind of like cry that made me feel like when I was 5, like boogers, tears, just, I didn't give a crap. I was just letting it out. And it felt so good. And that voice came back, it was like this like personal therapist that was kind of like me or God or my higher self. And I was like, Gio, like, don't be so hard on yourself. You're doing a great job, keep working hard, keep following your passion, like all these beautiful things that was kind of different than my normal self-talk at the time. And I was just there, just like basking in this feeling, which was incredible. Like, I don't even know how to explain it. It was different. It was euphoric. It was profound. And as kind of like we wrapped up that session, I just sat there and was like, what just happened? Like, how is that even possible? And I felt different. I felt lighter. I felt like something had shifted within me. I couldn't really put my finger on what, but like something had changed within me in that moment. And when I got back to Toronto, I was like, okay, I need to figure out what that was. I need to find teachers who can teach me. And this is probably like 2016, I guess. And people weren't really talking about breathwork. Like, people knew about breathwork, but like it wasn't mainstream. It wasn't easy to find. It wasn't like there's breathwork classes happening. So I was just searching for anyone I could learn from, whether it was a yogi who was doing pranayama. I found myself like in Kensington Market in some like hippie apartment, doing breath work, just like wherever I could find it, people would come like just doing it and experiencing it. And then started my own practice, and just using different breathing techniques. And one thing about breath work is as you breathe, your brain waves change. You go from beta to alpha to theta, maybe even gamma. And the default mode network kind of shuts off the analytical part of the brain where a lot of our fears and beliefs are, and the analytical mind. And so that shuts off. You can go into this like state of transient hypofrontality, this very creative flow state. And as I was breathing, it would be like, try this. Okay, like, let's do that. And start adding that on and try this. And so like slowly this method started evolving that I was just using for myself. And I had also spent some time at the Institute of Heart Math down in San Francisco. And so I learned about heart coherence. I learned about these specific meditations and using high vibrational states to kind of pull you into coherence. So I started adding that in. And it really unlocked when I started using music, because some of the other techniques is just like breathe and keep breathing, keep breathing. And I would get lost and my ADHD brain would be like, where am I? What am I doing? Like losing focus. When I started syncing my breathing to the rhythm of music, and I love music, like I started going deeper, faster. And it was just like holding the space for me. And like, okay, like something happened there. And so I had opened a wellness studio, and about a year after a year or so after I did the experience, the training with Wim Hof, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this breath work here, so let's get some guinea pigs. I want to try it out. Let's see what happens, like see if other people have the same experience I'm having. So we did like the first couple classes and people loved it, like it was working. They were having those experiences. So I'm like, okay, there's something here. It was interesting because, that business was like me taking a leap into something that was unknown. I wanted to create a space that I was looking for when I came back from my first ayahuasca. So people who are going through something, people are looking for community, people who want to expand and meet other people that maybe think differently than, maybe their environment that they're used to. I put all my money into it, took some loans, put my house up as collateral, and I launched this business, never having any experience in any business like that. And pretty quickly I realized I had no idea what I was doing. And this fear came in, this fear of failure, like, oh man, you did it. You're going to fail, you're going to lose all your money. You're going to probably have to sell your house, live with your in-laws or your parents. And it was just like this huge kind of like fear-based thinking that put me into like a really dark period. So the breathwork's happening and this community starting to form. And the other side, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to lose everything. And I remember during the construction phase before we opened, I started smoking, started drinking wine at night because I was just so stressed, wasn't sleeping. And I got to this point where I was like, I'm opening a health center and I'm the opposite example of what a healthy person should be right now. And I really had to face my fear of failure. Like that was like a really big thing that was coming up for me because the universe is always kind of providing these opportunities to shift and change, but it usually sends a challenge. I saw this, I don't know if it was a post or a meme, and it was, when David was going to become king, God didn't send him a crown. He sent him Goliath, you know, to slay the giant to become the king. And I love that metaphor because like that's life, like when you're ready to evolve and transform, you're gonna get more challenges, to see if you're ready. You want to do this wellness business. Why are you actually doing it? Is it about the money? Okay, here, let's face failure and see how that feels. And so I realized, okay, like I can't control if I'm gonna fail or not. And I realized there was also fear of judgment. So I thought about all the people I was going to be afraid they were going to judge me and get specific. Because it seemed like everyone was going to just be waiting outside for me to like have the eviction notice come and laughing at me on my way out. Like that's like in your mind, like everyone's going to know about it. And when I really thought about it, there's only like 2 or 3 people that I could actually pinpoint that might in passing say, hey, did you hear about Gio? He failed. Like, and those people like I probably hadn't seen in years, maybe people from high school. I was like, I don't really care if they judge me. And like all the people that actually cared about me, I know they would support me and they would lift me up and help me get back on my feet. So it's like, okay, I'm being really ridiculous right now. I'm going to focus on every single person that comes through that door. I'm going to treat them like they're the most important person on the planet. I'm going to just try to help them in whatever way I can. So the energy started to shift. At the same time, although the place wasn't busy yet, this breathwork community was forming. People were coming and they were having these experiences. And I just felt so much fulfillment from that. So I wasn't making money, but I was feeling fulfilled. So I was getting like profit in a different way. Is the way that I would explain it. It was a different kind of profit that I wasn't used to. And so everything logically would say, shut this place down. It doesn't make sense. The money's not there, cut the losses, move on, do something else. But there was this other thing that was happening. And finally, after a couple of years, we're starting to just like break even, starting to make a profit, and COVID happens. Everything shuts down. I'm like, okay, God, what is the message here? What is the learning? Like, why is this happening? And people started asking me at that point if I could teach them how to lead breathwork. I never thought of myself as a teacher. I've never really taught anything. And every time someone asks, like, I don't know, make excuses, I don't have time, I'm too busy, blah, blah, blah. And this happened, now there's no excuse. So, I was like, okay. So there's a few people in the community, a few people that work there, a few friends are like, hey, like now if you're going to teach, like now's the time. So, okay. So let me think about it. And to be completely honest, my old self, which was transactional and a business guy, was like, okay, this is my competitive advantage. No one's doing this kind of breath work. If I start teaching all these people in this area, I'm gonna have all these competitors, like why would I want to do that? So I told him I would think about it. I went to meditate on it. And immediately the answer was clear. It was like, look, if you want to help as many people as possible and really create change, you have to just share this. You didn't invent breath work. You found a way to kind of express it in your own way and like just share it, see what happens. Don't overthink how you're going to do this and make money and all that kind of stuff. Just go from the heart and see what happens. And so it's okay. And so we did the first training. I dumped everything in my brain onto, a makeshift manual, printed it off, and away we went. And we did, 3 or 4 days in person, just figuring it out. And at the end of that, I'm like, hey guys, go home and practice, find some guinea pigs, family, friends, and you gotta get some practice. So a week later, we come back. And what happened kind of like shocked me because I wasn't expecting it, but they started sharing their experiences of doing breathwork with their family and their friends and sharing things that like, like I did breathwork with my dad. It was the first time we cried in front of each other in my whole life. We shared things that we'd never been able to share before because you get this part of the brain out of the way and then like you go into the heart. And I remember the feeling, and I'm getting it right now, like the goosebumps of like, okay, wow, like I wasn't even in that experience, and I received so much from them sharing that and having that. And I was like, then I knew, okay, like you're supposed to share this and teach people. And so from there, we just started having more trainings, and people just came. It grew organically. Like it was the only business that really didn't have to like focus on marketing plans and all this kind of stuff. It just kind of like followed my heart and led and had that intention, and people came and showed up. And now we have over, I think over 500 facilities around the world now. And now we're like, I'm like so inspired to keep going and sharing this, and there was a learning curve there too. And, you know, to wrap the story in Elemental, 6 or 7 years later, so end of 2023, I was in Costa Rica for a bit. I came back and we had some issues with management. And again, like I abandoned the place when COVID happened. Like a few years later after that, I left and came back saying, what are we gonna do with this place? I was like, okay, well, someone said try sell it. So I looked into selling it, but after 2 years of COVID, financials were horrible. No one was looking to buy, kind of a place that needed some renovations and, wasn't really making money. So okay, that's not going to be good. So the only two options left was to close it or get investors and scale this thing. And I helped the guys from Othership in the early days launch, and I always wanted to do something like that at a bigger scale. But I never felt like I had the model figured out to scale. I wouldn't want someone to buy something that I wasn't 100% confident in. So I created this whole new model that was going to simplify the business, and all the mistakes I'd made, I was going to correct all those and just do it differently. And it's okay. I got to attract the right investors. And the whole time in the beginning, especially in fear, I was like, okay, some rich investor is going to come in, love the place, and take all my financial problems away and just like back this thing, and we're going to do it together. And the interesting thing is, like, a few of those people came in, but I never felt comfortable to ask them or to try to like do it. It almost happened a couple of times, but it wasn't there. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to really focus on who do I want to bring in? What's the qualities I want them to have? How can they really support this? And I attracted these two different groups that were willing to invest, they've been perfect partners. Like, you could make them more perfect, well established, lots of connections, lots of money, love the space, wanted to do something like that. And it was December 2023, and we were about to just renovate. So we pulled everything out. There were some damages we had to fix because of the water leaks and stuff. And I remember being there and had this feeling of just like, dude, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. Like, this strong internal feeling is like, this is not. And this big fear of conflict and letting people down. And, part of, I guess, my ADHD, which I realize is, I don't like to label things, but like characteristics is like, ADHD is always looking for dopamine hits, right? You get bored of something that's not interesting. You think about something else because, you want that kind of like stimulation. And there's other thing with ADHD is this thing called helper's high. You get that dopamine rush by helping other people. And I realized I did that a lot. And the things I was supposed to do, I would always kind of put second and wanting to help other people because it made me feel good and liked. And I had fear of abandonment, all these kind of things, which we don't have to get into. But I was like, how am I going to tell these people that are ready to invest? I got to talk to the bank, which is not going to feel good. I got to tell the landlord, but it was just like, dude, this is what you have to do. You're not supposed to be doing this. You're not supposed to be wrapped up in this business, tied to these investors, going through this for the next 10 years of your life. Do you really want to do that? I was like, no. So that day I decided I'm shutting this thing down. Like, I'm just closing, tell the community, tell everyone. And I just did it. And all the hard conversations that I had went way better than I thought they were going to be. Everyone understood, because the people that love you and care about you are going to understand. People that are just transactional, that want something from you, are probably going to hem and haw and, like, oh, you let me down. But they're probably in it for their own reasons and not there to support you. And there was a few other things that were lingering at the time. I just kind of like shut it all down. I was like, okay, I got to get clear on what I want to create and what I'm in alignment with, and shut that down. So I did that. I never looked back from there. Like, it just felt so good to like let that go, because I knew it wasn't serving me. Although like it was a financial loss, there was other things that were going to lose hard conversations, but it was what I really needed. And I knew that, and I trusted my gut instinct and my heart to make that decision. And looking back, I realized, like, although I never really made money there and it was like a hard time, I learned so much about myself, but these other things blossomed out of it. Like, this whole elemental rhythm came because of that place. If I didn't have that place, none of this would have been created. I have another company called Personal Development School that I met through that place. I met my partner, who's like one of my closest friends, one of my mentors and teachers, where I was getting my coaching certification because I wanted to coach people there. And I just randomly bumped into her. I'm like, hey, let me coach you. I need a practice client. Will you do it? And we hadn't seen each other in a little while. And she's like, yeah, for sure. And she was overworked, doing one-on-one with clients and doing some great stuff. And through the coaching, we were like, hey, like, you're going to burn out doing this. You need to like go online, start a business, blah, blah, blah. This is at a point where my wife was like, if you start another business, I'm going to kill you. Like, there was just too much. After Elemental, I had like, my whole life was just starting businesses, tattoo shop downtown and food manufacturing, sales at a construction company. But there's something that in my heart was saying, like, yeah, work with Thais. There's something special you guys can do together here. And so So okay, this is the last one. Like this is it. And I ended up shutting down a bunch of other companies around that time. We started this thing called the Personal Development School, and it's not only changed the lives of so many people. Like we've had like tens of thousands of people come through our programs, but it changed my life in so many ways, and just like showing up and supporting. And so like sometimes these things that we want to put into a box is like, yes, no, transactional, profitable, shut it down, not like, it created all these other things in my life that I'm so grateful for now. And I'm so grateful for that experience, all the losses, all the struggles, the sleepless nights, the ups and downs of COVID, because it helped me to change who I was. And there's this saying, it's not where you're going or like the challenge, is who you become in that process, which is what's so important. And that's why in our training in elemental, like, yeah, I teach a method, a structure, a framework. But what I'm really focused on is helping each facilitator have their own transformation, doing the breathwork daily, getting into their own practice, helping to identify what's holding them back, because that's what's going to take them to the transformation they're looking for. They come to breathwork a lot of times because, yeah, they want to help others, but they want to make an income and they want to change lives. But the only way to really do that is if they change themselves, from that person they were before to what they want to become. Right. And that's what's going to make a great facilitator, leader, coach, business person, the way they market themselves, to be authentic, to not be afraid of their limiting beliefs and their fears are probably what's really holding them back. Because they think one more training is going to make me have a piece of paper on my wall and I'm going to be certified. People are going to, trust me. But the paper doesn't do nothing. It's that inner shift that happens when they actually see the transformation. They start believing in themselves and start not being afraid to share about themselves. And so that's what my focus has become, is like all of our trainings are designed to teach the skills, but also to bring that person through their own transformation. So I know I went on a whole rant there with my story and I kind of like went all over the place, but I'll bring it back in now and let you ask any questions you want. So I
Oh
hope that
man.
wasn't too much.
No, that was so incredible. And like I've heard pieces of that story here and there, but to hear it all laid out like that in like a really coherent timeline is just, there's so much profound wisdom that came through. And I think a lot of young people like myself personally are at this point in our lives. A lot of my viewers are of my generation, and we are at this point where we're trying to find our purpose. And I'm like an entrepreneur who's just at the start of my business journey. So to hear how you've been able to overcome the difficulties is helping me to feel more comfortable with the difficulties that I'm facing right now. And also, I just want to say too that I got to study as a breathwork facilitator under you, and it was amazing to meet you then. But the positive impact that you had on my life transcended that meeting, and it happened long beforehand because I was actually in a plant medicine experience myself, and I got to experience your breathwork the second day. And like you, I had this incredible expansion, and my heart opened, and I literally cried tears of joy like I had never cried in my entire life. And it was this incredible transformation that I had from all those steps that you took. Like I'm one of those people that was affected by what you've done. And after that moment, I'm like, I know that I want to do this and help other people with it. And I think the last thing that you said was so powerful, which is like, we can only share what we know ourselves, right? Like we can only offer the world the level to which we've attained of our own self-knowledge and our own self-realization. So what stands out to me about what you've done is the fact that this has really been a guided process, from the 1111 textbook to the different guidances that you've received along the way, has basically created this system that is more than just an individual creation, but it's like a sort of collective creation, which is, I think, why it impacts so many people in such a positive way. And now that I'm a facilitator, I've also seen the other end of it, where I've had people in my sessions come to me and start crying and tell me about all their, incredible experiences. And really, yeah, it's just, it's so nice to hear about your journey and hear how all this came to be, and to develop a more intimate relationship to what this actually is. I think it helps a lot of people because, like I'm a part of the wellness community in Ontario now, and I've rarely met somebody who doesn't know what elemental rhythm is. And I still have people coming to me wanting to become facilitators themselves, So you've really have succeeded at creating a community of like-minded people, and all of that difficulty that you've overcome has been proven to be for a good purpose and for a good reason. And there's so many different questions I could ask you from all of this. We could go into plant medicine or family or breathwork.
Yeah, I could
But
speak to a few things that you said though, if you want.
yeah, of course.
Well, the first thing is like what I realized, it's not about like getting a better marketing team or, figuring out the process to grow. It's about really getting clear on what you want to do. and your mission, and what's the energy and driving force behind that, and how you create the most value in what you want to share. Like that's the most important thing. It's not about hacking Instagram or social media or Facebook ads. It's about really creating something that feels good to you, that you feel amazing sharing, because that energy is what's going to drive all of those things forward. So when you're creating something, especially for young entrepreneurs, it's like, why are you really doing this? Like, what is the outcome and the experience that you want to give to people? Whether it's a food product, whether it's, a brand, whether it's whatever, it's like really get clear on that. How do I create this value that when people experience it, they're going to be like, wow, I love this product, this teaching, this experience, and it's going to leave them with something, like a feeling. Like, what's that feeling you want to give to them when they interact with you, your business, or your services? And I had to get clear on that, because even through this process, a couple of years, like I had to hire a better like marketing guy or sales team or all these things. But what I really realized was like I had to get clear within myself, like what was really at the essence of it, and I saw areas where I still didn't fully believe in myself. Like people might look at me and it's like, oh, this guy's got to figure it out. And, but I'm looking at like other people in the space and like, oh, look what these people are doing. Look at these people on Mind Valley, and these people are like on these big podcasts. And I was like, I want to be like that. Right. And really, like, I had this experience where I got this opportunity with like Shift Network, and they reached out to me and like, yeah, I'd love to. And I was in this place of fear of rejection, and I want to make it good. And so they asked me, like, hey, what would you do for programs? So I gave all my best stuff. Like I was about to release a program for our community, which I'm going to release soon. But I gave it all to them. And then they're like, oh, okay, who could send out for you? Because I don't have a huge network. Like it's decent, but like they're like any partners that will send out for you. Like who do you know that will do it? And I was like, so I reach out to like all of my friends that have big followings, and like, hey, would you send this out? They're like, yeah, of course. We're with Shift Network, and so I put all my stuff in this proposal. And a couple of days later, they're like, thanks for your submission. We went a different direction, and I was just like, oh. And I didn't feel the type of rejection I thought I'd felt. That quickly justifies my mind how like, hey, this is good, because it's like not what I'm supposed to be doing. I was supposed to be focusing on like these other things, and realize like, oh, why can't I just ask these people to send out my stuff? There was something that they're like, why didn't I ever want to ask them to just share Elemental? I needed this other thing with me to feel confident to ask them, And then why was I so quick to like, okay, I'm gonna put this whole thing together and get it done for them when I'm kind of been dragging my feet on it? It was interesting because that next week I was at Rhythmia. It's a plant medicine center that I guess speak at, and I teach a few times a year. And so I went and I kind of brought that in there. And the whole week was just like 3 days of getting my ass kicked, like literally like purging, and little memories of coming up of like rejection as a kid, like from girls, not making the hockey team, the first time I tried out, and all these little things that I had shame and fear about. And it was trying to show me that these things are still within you, and they're kind of still lingering in the background. And then it started showing me all the amazing work I was doing, the people's lives that were changing, and the memories, like all these memories flooding through. And it was like, in order to step into that, you have to let that old part of you die. And you have to know that's no longer true. And another death experience on the medicine, and it was so intense, and purged a lot, and I realized, okay, I'm ready to let that go. I'm ready to kind of step in. And I could see, even sometimes talking to my team, like feeling like my competitors are doing better, and like they're doing it was like, okay, like that's because the message is not, it's coming through distorted because of these fears and limitations I still have about myself. And I was like, okay, I'm going to refocus. I'm just going to make this the best program, the best content, the best, like with the end user in mind of who I want to share this with. And I don't give a shit what anyone else does. Like, who cares? They do their thing. I'm going to do it my way. And so I just started doing that. And this is like probably in the last, year, like it wasn't like this happened like 5 years ago. Like it's a continual evolution, and everything started changing again. I just started seeing this different way I was showing up, and my team was showing up, and the people who we were attracting. And um, then a couple months later, I'm like going to the Shift Network, like, hey, like I would love to just do a breathwork for your community. Like, what do you think about that? Like I don't need to do some course or whatever, I think would be valuable. Like, well, actually, we got this new program that we're going to launch. You should apply for it. Like, okay. So this time I applied, it came from a whole different space. This is exactly how I want to do it. Here's how I want to show up. Here's what I feel good doing. Not like what I think is they're going to say yes to. It's like, this is what I want, and I feel is going to be the best impact. And like the next day, like, yeah, you're in. We're going to do it. So we're going to launch something this this summer with Shift Network, and it was just like, okay, like there was this shift that had to happen in me, and the rejection was so important because it helped me to see something inside myself that I couldn't see. And that's the problem with these subconscious beliefs. We're not aware of them. From the outside, I felt confident. Anyone else will say you're confident, but there was something lingering that was holding me back from that next level. And it had nothing to do with a marketing team or a new funnel or better Facebook ads. It was something in me had to shift, and had to shift in the way I'm expressing it through the services or products that I create. And, it just goes to show that we are like our best asset and our biggest enemy. The answers are within us if we're willing to look and do the work. And I've dedicated myself to this constant process of self-inquiry, and all the practices are that, whether it's plant medicine, meditation, breath work, yoga, fasting, like this is all a process in expanding our self-awareness. And, when you mentioned about like seeing the signs, 1111, all that stuff, listen, those signs are there for everyone. Everyone on this planet is guided. They're there if you have the awareness to see it. Now, if your mind is full of like noise and fear and stress, and the world is crazy and our lives are crazy and worrying about money, worrying about this and our relationship, when are you gonna have that time to actually get clear and to make those changes, right? It's a process. So I started seeing, as I started doing that, it could be as simple as changing your diet, starting a meditation practice, going out in nature, whatever it is. It starts somewhere, and you start getting clear, and then you start seeing the signs. And if you're open to receive, they're going to be more and more and more. The synchronicities start getting crazy in your life. Things start happening. I have so many stories of like the craziest synchronicity that would be like, if I had to put a probability to it, it'd be 1 in a billion, but the actual probability is 100% because it was supposed to happen, because I was ready and it was the right time and it came to me. And the last thing I'll say about like your reflection on the first part is, how old are you, John?
I'm 27, turning 20
27.
here. So
beautiful. So in your 20s, you're supposed to feel lost. You're supposed to be confused, because this is you breaking free and starting to evolve from that you that was kind of like nurtured as a child, went to school, everything was kind of told about what you should do, how you should do it. Me is trying to tell you. And now something is like uncomfortable about letting go of all that and stepping to something new. But it's good to feel lost, because now you're asking questions. What is the point? Why am I doing this? What should I do? Something feels off. And that's a beautiful inflection point for transformation, is when you go into that process. And the 20s is like when you're ripe for it. You probably have a lot of creativity and ideas and curiosities, and it's okay to feel lost. Allow yourself to feel lost. Don't worry about it too much. Take action, work hard, but don't worry if you don't have it figured out. You're not supposed to figure it out at 20. Like if I figured things out at 20, I don't know where I'd be right now. Like I look back, I'm grateful for all my 20s and my 30s. Now in my 40s, I still don't have it figured out, but I've learned a lot, and I'm hopefully not going to make the same mistakes I made before, and I have a lot more experience, more patience, more presence to kind of think about things and not jump in. But the 20s is a really important time to allow yourself to go out, to learn, to fall on your face a few times, to try things, as long as you're learning and reflecting and taking something from every experience. Like that's what the most important thing is.
And
Rant
yeah.
over.
No, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And basically, like to some degree or another, I've seen you as this role model and almost like a parental figure for people, and like acting as a dad for many in some ways. So I appreciate
It's funny.
that
Some of
sort
my friends call me
advice.
daddy. Some of my friends that call me like daddy, because I'm older than a lot of the people I hang out with now, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because I hang out with older people. But sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. But I'd love now, I guess, to feel called to like ask you for some advice on something that I'm working through personally. Because I am this, I really am a creative person, and I am trying to make a difference in this world. But to some degree or another, I almost feel like I'm rushing, like I'm trying to force my success as if it will make me worthy or something like that. And I find it hard sometimes to like slow down and allow myself to like make mistakes and be okay with it, because I almost equate my own self-worth to what I've done and like the value that I've created in the world. So do you have any advice on like how to overcome this necessity for like pushing and forcing, and as opposed to just like allowing yourself to be guided and enjoy the process? I guess that's the biggest thing, is sometimes I have a difficulty enjoying the steps along the way because I want to get to the end,
Yeah, it's a tricky one, right? Like there's this kind of like paradox in this space that I wrestle with sometimes too. It's like, am I doing it because I really love helping other people? Or am I doing it because I love when they tell me that I've helped them because it makes me feel good about myself.
Mm.
You know, like if I did everything I did and got zero credit for it, would I still do it? You know, and no one even knew who I was. Like, would I? You know, that's the ego. It's like, and you can't have both, right? It can be both, but it kind of catches you sometimes. Like I want this to get out because I want to help people, but I want them to see me. So I feel worthy. Like I made an impact and they know like, hey, Gio helped them. Right. So I wrestle with that and it was like, okay, like it's a normal feeling to feel, you know, to want to have this recognition because a lot of us grow up and we're seeking recognition. Maybe we didn't get it from our parents. Maybe like it felt good or whatever it is. And it makes us feel worthy because someone else has to tell us that. Right. So the process would be there is like, one, not to be too hard on yourself. Two, like there's no such thing as perfection. You know, like actually perfection is imperfect. You know, it's these things that just happen in flow and just like are beautiful. And to allow yourself to go through that process, but also to not be so hard on yourself, to really give yourself the credit for the things you're already doing. Like, okay, like you're doing amazing. Give yourself the acknowledgement, you know, first, you know, because if you want to be a leader or a king, like you have to also lead yourself. You know, you can't fake it. You know, you have to, you mentioned something about the experiential aspect of it, like how we teach people how to become, you know, a living example so they can teach others. Right. Because I don't want to learn from someone who's read everything in a textbook and has not gone through a dark night of the soul. Like I want to learn from the people who've been into the fire and come out with a bucket of water and say, okay, man, it was hot in there. I learned something and now I'm ready to kind of like do things a little bit differently. And you're going through that process, right? Like, and you've been going through that process. So to really acknowledge that, and people are going to relate to that, and to be able to share from that space of vulnerability, so people can see themselves in you, and not like, you know, I need to be here so that I get acknowledged as like someone that's done all these great things. Like, look, everything I do, anyone else could do, and I hope they do it. And I want them to do it. I want to give them that because they're going to express their version of that in their own way. That's going to attract that exact person needs to hear from them. You know. So when you're going through that, it's like, okay, like why am I actually doing this in the first place? Like what is my real intention for all the things that I'm doing? You know? And if I want to help people, just start helping people. You know, don't worry about how many people you help. Really work at impacting the people that are in your space right now in the best way you can. Because when you do that, the ripple effect is just going to happen naturally. It's not about faster, better, getting it out there. It's like it's going to come. And the more you do that, your process is going to evolve. What you think right now is the best way, this program that you have is probably great, but it's probably like version 1.0 of something that's going to be version 10.0 eventually. Right. So put it out, let it be imperfect, get that feedback, see how you feel, see how they feel, like what you're actually building here. It's better to like release it in stages. Like in the tech world, it's like minimum MVP, minimum viable product. What's the minimum thing I can put out to get a response to see how people react to it? Put my intention into it, put it there, put it out, get feedback, see how it works, and now iterate from there. And each time you make it better. And with these small incremental steps, something amazing happens. Our training, it's changed every single time we've done it. The first one was a mess. Second one's a little bit better. Third one, okay, we're getting it. Now we got it. And now we're still tweaking it. It's okay. Like this thing here doesn't feel as good as it could be. But if I didn't fix everything else, I wouldn't even have the clarity to see that little thing needs to get fixed now, you know, because there's just so much all over the place. Right. And that's for like any business, you know, like any kind of new endeavor. It's like get things out there, get real feedback, test your product, test your experience, embody it yourself as much as you can, and meet people where they're at. Because the other thing too, where there's a lot of drop off is like you've done all these things and most people haven't even started yet, you know, and you're 27 and you want to start teaching them about all the wisdom you have now. You got to teach John like version 1.1. You know, like how would I introduce him to that kind of stuff versus I want to create this masterpiece for people who are where I'm at right now, where it's like, well, like where's that gap that you got to fill with all those people that actually want to get to where you are, that are not ready for, you know, hours of meditation or plant medicine or all these things. It's like, how do you meet them where they're at?
The thing that really like resonates with me about that is like to use like the baseball outfielder example. It's like when he's chasing after the ball, he's not worried about the thousands of people watching him to see if he's going to catch it. He's just in the moment of the creation. And I think sometimes like, I don't know if this is programming from social media or like my own self-worth issues, but it sometimes I get caught up in the numbers as if it's like the quantity of the impact that I have is what really matters. But I think what you're saying on some level is to focus on the quality quantity, and then that's when the quality will start to come. And yeah, I think that's a really important to reframe is, of course, it's both, right? Like, you do want to help as many people as you can in a beautiful way, but focus first on what it is that you're actually selling, and then you don't have to worry about how it will impact, because it just will, you know?
Like, when you help someone in that way, there's like this energetic frequency that kind of gets created in the universe or in reality or in this experience. And that's what's going to bring that later when you just keep focusing on that. Like that imprint of like that deep impact on the people that you can serve right now. Because you can have 1 million followers and serve them in such a low level, non impactful way. You can have 100 followers and change their lives. As you do that, what's going to happen? You're going to attract more people. They're going to share about it. They're going to change. People are going to ask them, like, what happened? Like, why are you so different? Like you said, people asked you, where'd you learn how to do this? Like, because I focus on just teaching you really well and making sure like every single person. So when they go out, like maybe it comes back to me, maybe they learn from you. It doesn't really matter. I read this interesting post today on Instagram. I think his name is David Guillaume. And he was like, oh, someone asked, do you get mad when people steal your content? He's like, no. Like, what if they don't credit you? It doesn't matter, because like I shared that through me, and that energy is going out, and the universe is going to bring it back to me in some way, shape, or form. I know that. They're just kind of like an amplifier, a megaphone. They're passing it on. And if I get too caught up in like trying to chase that and like, hey, like that was mine, you have to give it back to me. It's like the universe doesn't work like that. A lot of the truths that he shares are universal knowledge anyways. It just comes through his expression. It's like, yeah, if someone like steals your whole IP and like copies your product, yeah, you might need to sue them. But the way you even answered that was, it was because I want to protect the people who are getting that content. Because if they're thinking it's me and it's not as good of quality, then actually they're getting ripped off. And so in that case, I would probably try to take some action. But otherwise, it's like I'm putting my intention out there and I'm allowing it to kind of unfold. And the numbers don't matter. And social media is like funny because one, you see like everyone's best 2 to 5% of their life, and it's not a real reflection of their real lives. But secondly, like it's a long game. It's a long game and there's strategies to it, but like the essence of how you share has to come from that right place so people hear it. And I tell people it's good to have an Instagram game, but if you're not doing the groundwork in real time, it doesn't matter what you're doing Instagram. If you're not changing people's lives, doing the work, helping, like that's what's going to help you make better Instagram content, because through that, you're going to evolve and you're going to be able to speak in a way like you would speak to that person you're helping. And when you can share that authentically through Instagram, not reading a script or trying to like copy a framework, when it comes from your heart, the right people who hear that are going to resonate with that. And then they're going to be attracted to your energy and they're going to follow you and they're going to probably buy your service or product. Because I've seen some page with 5 million followers that they couldn't sell 20 t-shirts. True story. My friend has a t-shirt printing company. He's like, yeah, we thought it was going to be a big thing. They have 5 million followers. They launched all these t-shirts with their brand and they couldn't even sell 2 dozen, because no one really cared about them, So again, like, why do the numbers matter? Is it validating? Is it because I need to make money for my followers? Is it whatever? It's like, okay, like you can figure out ways to get those vanity metrics and not impact you or anyone in any way, right? So it's like focus on the impact first and allow that to kind of unfold. I've been at Instagram for a long time, a very long time. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Only this year have I started to really get followers, right? I was like 5 years, I was under 10,000 and just slowly creeping up, 1,000 a year, maybe 1,500. And then I saw a big jump to 15,000. But I noticed as I was shifting within and having these realizations about myself, how I was showing up differently, putting intention to actually what I want to say, and like thinking about like, how do I want to share this? Right? What's the message behind it? What's the reason why I'm sharing this? Like my content started changing. People resonate with it differently, and then kind of things started to grow like that. But it took me to evolve, and that takes time. You can't like
Mm-hmm.
skip through steps. You can't like supercharge, just like take on a evolution supplement. Like ayahuasca could be an evolution supplement, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. And although you skip steps, it's like you pay for it with the purging and everything else, right? So
It's hard
on
work.
some level,
It's
it's
hard
like,
work.
yeah, it's just a different type of work that you're doing. And, there's so many different things that I'd love to talk about. Maybe you'd be willing to come on again and we can get into some
Sure.
other topics. But I just want to ask you now, like, so, you have built this community and you are stepping up as a leader, and especially in men's work as well, right? Like, with all the work that you've done at Man Camp and that incredible epic mosh pit that you ran last year. So I just wanted to ask you, like, what would you consider to be one of the most like integral or virtuous qualities of a leader? What's like a really important characteristic that leaders should work towards developing in their life?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I think integrity as like a blanket statement is important, which is a lot of layers to integrity, you know. Um, integrity is me being honest, not being judgmental, being fair, but also standing up for what you believe in, you know. I think a good leader can be very vulnerable and to kind of share from a place of power that, they're not perfect. Because there's no one perfect in this world, and again, like even again, I'm relating to back to breath work. Like people are like, oh, I'm still healing, going through my transformation. How can I lead breath work? But that's okay. You don't have to be fully healed because you're never kind of like fully there, unless maybe like you're Jesus or something like that, you know. So it's just being honest, but also leader needs to hold space for other people, so to listen, to kind of understand, and also guide them in the right direction, with compassion, but also um being able to call people out, and like, but in a loving way, like for what's best for them, not to be afraid to have hard conversations. So I think there's a lot to leadership. It's not just like, what's the one thing, because they're all important in their own ways, but overall, it's just being an integral person, don't tell people to do something that you don't do or you wouldn't do yourself, and how do you show up when no one's watching? Well, how do you make decisions when no one will know the answer? Are you in integrity in yourself, or, are you trying just to lead from power and aggression and control, because those leaders may be successful as leaders in some ways, but I wouldn't necessarily say like they're a good leader, like, can you believe in the people you lead, and can you inspire them, and not create the separation between you and them? Like, yeah, sometimes leadership, there has to be some level of like, um, leader and kind of like, authority, but not from a dominating place, from like a lifting up place, to help people get to your level, to be also become leaders themselves, So I think those are some of the ways that I kind of like look at leadership, on like how do you lift people up and stay in integrity and be authentic and be yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess I would just ask one final question, which is like, if there was like one thing that the viewer at home, one piece of advice that you could give them that's like universal advice that would potentially benefit most people, what's like that main thing that you would tell people if you had an opportunity? If you knew somebody was really listening and you could offer them one thing, what would be that one takeaway?
Um, I would say number one is like, don't take life too seriously. Don't over worry about the small stuff. Like we're here for such a short time, and a lot of us spend so much time worrying about something that never is going to happen. And if something crazy does happen, then you're gonna have to learn from it and deal with it, and just trust that you have the ability to show up. So it's just not to over take things way too seriously. And I saw this funny meme once where this angel was like over like someone who was just like there crying, and it's like, look at these humans, like they create their own perpetual suffering from worrying too much. Like they take it way too seriously. Like if they just knew like, hey, like this is not going to be the end and there's more to it. It's like, don't be serious, because everything will pass. But at the same time, like it doesn't mean not to like be like disassociate yourself from life. And it's like, oh, like I'm not gonna do nothing. It's to engage with life and to work on yourself, whatever that means to you. And I would suggest, obviously, breath work is a great tool to start opening that up. Not take it too seriously, and just continue on the path of self improvement. And the way you do that is you just follow your intuition and your curiosity. It'll lead you somewhere. It may not be the right thing, but just follow it. Dip your toe in. If you're feeling a pull towards something, listen to that, because that's the guiding force that comes from somewhere else that's trying to guide you. Right. So listen to that curiosity, follow your intuition, get out of your comfort zone, and that's where all the growth and joy and beauty happens outside of there, and some lessons too. But if you don't go there, you're gonna stay where you are.
Hmm. And that reminds me of like, I've heard once like a saying about angels where they basically say that the reason they can fly is because they take life so lightly. you know, and
Wow,
I
I feel
think,
like
yeah, it is just like that, right? It's that playful, that loving energy. And, you know, I think we are often in the masculine, which is like the doing and the creating, as opposed to just the enjoying and the eros of the feminine and surrendering. So yeah, I think it's really important to have a balance between both those things. And that's just great advice. So thank you so much, brother, for being here and for sharing yourself and your wisdom with all of us today. And I know a lot of the viewers will really resonate with a lot of what you had to say. And I'll link some of your, you know, opportunities to work with you in the future in the description down below. So like Man Camp is a great opportunity, and I'm sure you'll be maybe facilitating some other events like summer, what is it, summer days this summer or something. There's
I'm
a
actually going to Europe this summer, so I missed some
oh,
summer
cool.
days. I'm bummed about that, but it's always a great festival. I highly recommend summer days. Amazing people, great workshops, good music. There's a lot of good festivals in Ontario in the summer to check out if you're looking at getting out of your comfort zone and meeting new people and trying something different, or finding your tribe that, you know, is already there waiting for you. So yeah, Man Camp will be there. There's Everlove Festival up in Collingwood. It's a new one that's happening this year. I'll be at that one. And yeah, just stay tuned to my Instagram. There's always stuff popping up in the flow if you want to connect.
Amazing. Okay, thank you, brother. It's been such a pleasure. If there's any final sentiment that you want to share, now would be the time. But otherwise, I guess do really want to say thank you for being here, and I'm really grateful for all the lessons you've given to me and my community and the people around me. So yeah, big thanks to you.
Absolutely. Just want to share gratitude for the invitation to be here to share, and thank you for all the work that you do. And if you're listening, uh, you're here for a reason. You're on some sort of journey of transformation. Listening to John's podcast, hearing this, is like, keep going. You're on your path, and it's gonna be a beautiful journey. So keep going, explore, trust yourself, and keep doing the work.
Hmm. Keep doing the work. All right. Okay, thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you in the next episode. Have a good one.